I have some very spicy news to tell all of you today, and honestly, it's not good news, but it is important news. It is the continued story that is ever evolving about Sony acquiring Kadokawa. And to just get the brief statement out, it's very important for any anime, manga, light novel, and merchandise fan of Japanese culture, because if Sony does get Kadokawa, it's a monopoly. Case in point, I have talked about this, so I'm not going to get back into that. The point of the matter is there's been some more information that's come out, and since I made my video yesterday. So basically, yesterday I talked about how, Kadokawa and Sony were going to be going at the negotiation table, and Kadokawa seemed excited about the prospect, and now Sony basically has confirmed their interest in acquiring Kadokawa. It is true that we have expressed our initial intentions, aka at the negotiation table. However, this is a point that I want to talk about before I go into anything else. Employees at Kadokawa are also excited about the thought of Sony acquiring the company due to unhappiness with the current leadership. That's interesting. When I read this today, I was like, what are they unhappy about? I'm honestly curious. So, I did a brief Google search, and one brief Google search later, I found out the problem. A few years ago, 3 years ago, the CEO, the actual still current CEO of Kadokawa, he is still the CEO, he is pro-censorship. He tried to do a pro-censorship type of ordeal with products and stuff on TV programming, and obviously the Japanese community was furious. They did not like it, they did not want it, and obviously the CEO had to back off, and he issued a formal apology, as you could see right here. But obviously the damage was done. Now this isn't the end of that story. For instance, just because there was the pro-censorship, there was even more stuff that was put up against the CEO that is still the CEO of Kadokawa. So basically, it was an article that was made or updated earlier today, but also was posted about a month ago. But to get to the straight point of it, Kadokawa suffered a ransomware cyber attack earlier this year, but employees were left disappointed by the response from the current president and CEO, Takeshi Natsuno. Now, once again, this is the same CEO that is responsible for the pro-censorship stuff that happened a few years back. And so, there is multiple moments throughout this man's career of leading Kadokawa where he has done a very bad job. And so, the employees are obviously not happy. So it's starting to make a lot more sense why this statement was made and why they're happy, or they're very unhappy with the current leadership of Kadokawa and that they want Sony to acquire them. Makes a lot more sense. This is making a lot more sense now why, Kadokawa is trying to embrace it with open arms, but at the same time, they're trying to keep from foreign entities and countries from buying them out, aka like Tencent, Microsoft, and also Kakao. So, perfectly fair. Now, this does give more information to the why. It still doesn't mean it's good, like for instance, if they are bought out, but obviously this makes a lot more sense because it's very clear that Kadokawa's CEO does not have the best interest in the actual consumers in mind. For instance, the only reason why they backpedaled was because of the backlash they received a few years back. And so, the problem here is that there's two things that can happen. This gets into the real important stuff with the statement of Sony trying to acquire Kadokawa. Will Kadokawa's CEO change under Sony management? It could happen. Yes, we have seen this happen with companies being merged and stuff, but it's possible the CEO will go on to be able to manage it and be freer to do whatever they exactly want. And I want to point something out here that is very important that goes along with this entire article. A few years back, we all know Sony acquired Crunchyroll and Funimation, and then eventually Rightstuf. Upon the actual buying of Rightstuf, Rightstuf was forced to remove their adult section by Crunchyroll/Sony. Sony owns them. Their adult section had to be completely shut down, and I think transferred to somewhere else. But it made it basically what people were used to completely gone because Sony did not want it there. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that Sony doing this with Rightstuf, we already know that Sony is going to be getting a lot of adult different catalogs. Like, for instance, popping up one here, BookWalker. BookWalker is absolutely massive. Okay, this is a massive site in Japan that houses manga, light novels, and magazines and stuff. It is huge. This is not a small site. They are owned by Kadokawa. They also obviously house a lot of adult content. So, if we're following the track record of Sony and what they like to do, there could be some damage to BookWalker. Now, you're probably wondering, but this is Japan. This isn't obviously Rightstuf that was in the West. Well, gotta go one step further. So, BookWalker has had to change their policies. They have actively done this. This is straight from their site. You can literally go to their site and actually see this yourself. BookWalker has had to personally censor themselves and remove the ability to pay for adult content on their site because of credit card companies Visa and MasterCard, which I covered about a week ago. Those same people that are doing unethical censorship, bullying companies into forcing themselves to self-censor, they are already working their magic on BookWalker, making it very hard and difficult to be able to buy adult content on the site. So, we factor in that Sony will acquire this said site. They probably will do away with the adult section completely on BookWalker, anything that is potentially adult, and it will be removed to be able to get these payment processes back on the said site. It's, not good. Like, the two big dramas that's going on in Japan is now linked. It's not just one or the other. It's linked now. This is not good. Like, this is actually really freaking bad. So, obviously, Sony does have a lot of political pull. They do. I mean, they're not, like, massive, but they are a huge company, okay? Let's not kid ourselves. They are a big company. And they do have sway. They could talk with these card companies to be able to allow some leeway with some adult content on the said site. But we have seen Sony's antics already. I mean, once again, removing stuff from Rightstuf because of adult, content. So what's to say their agenda and what they've been doing is going to necessarily change. So yeah, to get to the meat of it, this is bad news. We now understand why Kadokawa wants to be bought, thanks to the poor management of the CEO. But once again, it's still not good, and it reinforces the major issues that I have and many others have been talking about for weeks now, and that more people need to be discussing this besides just talking about the whole, oh, Sony's going to acquire the FromSoft studio. Yes, that's huge. That's a big deal. But there's so much more to this story than just FromSoft being bought by Sony. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Be safe, stay healthy, and I love you guys. Chibi out.